Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Northside 9. This is 4-Star Chicago Sports. Unfortunately, my cohorts at 4 stars all have family obligations, so you get me alone today. We're going to break down the Cubs busting out the brooms in Camelback Ranch. I'm just kidding, guys, but the Cubs did play some baseball this week against the Los Angeles Dodgers and did handle some business, and we're going to get into that just a little bit because there was some interesting things that came out. It's only 2 days in the training camp, so we don't want to get too carried away. But as we go on into the show, we're going to talk about one of my favorite prospects in the Cubs organization, the Jaguar, Kevin Alcantara, who had a fantastic first couple days against the Dodgers in Camelback Ranch. We'll get into that. We're also going to get into some headlines for the Chicago Cubs. Of course, they had a couple of signings, but before we get into that, let's get into some injury updates from Craig Counsell. Owen Casey has been completely shut down. He underwent core muscle surgery this winter, and he is experiencing some tightness in his left groin, so he will be out. It does seem that Matt Shaw has returned. He is doing great, hitting in the cage and throwing again. And our potential maybe rotation guy, Javier Assad, has resumed playing catch. He has been a little bit banged up since the start of camp. Also, some big news coming out when the Cubs travel across the country, or across the world, over to Japan. Shota Imanaga has been named our starter for Game 1 in Japan on March 18th. And also announced this week, the Cubs and Dodgers season opener in Japan will broadcast nationally on Fox Channel 32. So we'll all be able to enjoy this. I will be up at 5 o'clock in the morning enjoying this. I hope you guys will be too, I believe it's going to be Yamamoto versus Shota in a showdown in Japan. A couple of signings, of course. We're going to get to the big one here in just a couple of minutes, which was Justin Turner. But the Cubs did also sign Chris Flexen, the 30-year-old starter who made 30 starts with the White Sox last season, earning a .495 earned run average. Flexen finished the season strong. He had 11 quality starts, finishing the year with a .352 earned run average over his final 8 starts of the season. He had 46 innings pitched. He's and looked pretty solid for the White Sox. He also was solid over 53 starts for the Mariners between 21 and 22, posting a .366 earned run average, a 3.6 WAR. So it's a bit of a good track record there for the Cubs to lean on. This was a minor league deal, so the Cubs will probably bring him up, see what he has, and probably be shuffled up and down, as it's a pretty stacked rotation for the Chicago Cubs as it stands right now. The Cubs also signed outfielder Travis Jankowski. He is a journeyman. This came from Aria Alexander, the 2023 World Series champ, should be joining the Cubs pending a physical. This guy is a former first-round pick. He's battled a ton of injuries. He's been up and down from the minors. This is his sixth major league team in 10 seasons. He does join a crowded outfield and doesn't really have a place at DH with Suzuki there. The 33-year-old did just spend the last 2 seasons with the Texans, played 211 games, and has a 136 or a 236 lifetime average. Excuse me, guys. It's still a little early. I'm just getting done with my coffee here. He does he can steal some bases. As you see, there's 102 stolen bases there for this gentleman. Looks like a guy who could be a quality bat for the Cubs here and there, adding a veteran presence like they did with John Birdie. Some of you guys may remember him from tying up the ball game in the Cubs home opener.
Top of the ninth. And to right field. Suzuki watches it. Pinch hit, home run. Game tie, Travis Jankowski. Wow.
He also does plaque an A+.
Started to make a little bit of noise as this one lifted out to right center. Long run for Jankowski, and he makes the catch. Hung up on the fence and brings that one back. Take
This kid also stepped up for the Royals the Rangers. I was looking at those baby blues and the Royals pop into my head. The Rangers in the playoffs when Garcia got hurt and actually performed very, very well for them. Had a home run robbed from a now Chicago Cub, Kyle Tucker, in the playoffs out in Houston as well. So we'll see what this guy brings into training camp. And see if he sticks around with the Cubs. For me, the move was a little confusing because you did cut Alexander Canario. The Cubs have a week to trade him, release him, or waive him. One or the other. He doesn't have any options left to get sent back down to the minor leagues. So, unfortunately, this young kid who came over in the Chris Bryant trade is no longer part of the organization. It's quite unfortunate. Last year in 15 games, posted a 284 earned run average. He looked pretty good, and he looked like he had some potential. So I'm really, really hoping that the Chicago Cubs can start figuring out a few things here with some of these prospects. And that's why I want to get in just a few minutes into Kevin Alcantara, because this is another kid who possesses a lot of tools. Currently a center fielder, and we'll talk about that for just a few minutes. I'm actually, thank you guys. Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Breaking News Bruce. If anyone in the chat, anyone out in the Twitterverse wants to jump in, ask a question, we're going to be here about 15, 20 minutes. We're going to rock this out, get through this training camp report. And as I said, we're going to get to the big one here. And the big one was obviously, and I say that comically, but it was Justin Turner. Justin Turner is on the move. He is now a Chicago Cub, inked a 1-year, $6 million deal. And this is in replacement of the whiff of Alex Bregman. So that brings me to some of these points here. You know, everyone was really worried about what Bregman brought to the table. In 139 games last year for Toronto and Seattle, Justin Turner had 139 games, 539 plate appearances. As you can see down here at the bottom of the graphic, his numbers were almost identical to Alex Bregman. Not to mention, if you go to 2023, Justin Turner's numbers were just a slight bit better in some areas and just below in some areas. So did the Cubs save some money here and actually get a steal in 40-year-old Justin Turner? Well, that will remain to be seen. But like I said, Justin Turner is on the move. He is now with the Chicago Cubs, and we'll see. And I've heard a lot of stuff going on in Cubs Twitterverse and Cubs Nation about the Chicago Cubs playing him at third base. Guys, he's not going to play at third base for the Chicago Cubs. I do believe that's going to be between John Birdie, and it seems as though Jonathan Long are going to be getting reps at first base, and Birdie will be getting some reps at third base. I don't know exactly what the backup plan is 100% for the Cubs with a backup to Matt Shaw. I guess we're going to have to see as spring training unravels just a little bit how the Cubs handle this backup third place situation. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Camel Toe Inspector, for jumping in, man. Henry, never seen you here before. Brother, I appreciate you jumping in on this Saturday morning. He said the Dodgers have ruined baseball for the foreseeable future. There's nothing to be excited about anymore. The splash cash and avoid player restrictions, which completely destroys competition. I don't disagree with you. And I'm going to tell you this, Henry. Next week, when my cohort Kyle Duplessis returns to the show, we're going to have a big time exclusive discussion about the Chicago Cubs spending. The Ricketts has been beat up in the media this week by Buster Olney, and the Cubby, I can't remember the name of the writer on the Cubbies crib, but he destroyed him. The pressure's starting to mount a little bit here on Ricketts, and you kind of starting to see Jed Hoyer separate himself just a little bit from the head honcho Ricketts. We're going to get into this. We have some fantastic stuff planned for you guys next week, breaking down Cheap Ricketts And what he's done to the Chicago Cubs being about $60 million less than where he was last year. But I really wanted to have somebody with me to bounce all these ideas out because it's a really, really, really big topic to break down. So stay tuned next week on the Northside 9. We'll go over what happened in training camp, and then we're going to have an exclusive discussion about the Chicago Cubs and their spending habits and how the neighborhood seems to be more important than the franchise fielding at Wrigley Field. So the Dodgers did what other teams can. Camel Toe Expector says the Dodgers did what other teams can do. They don't get mad at your owners for being cheap bastards. And Camel Toe, I agree with you 100%, my friend. That it is true to a point. Because teams like Pittsburgh, teams like Cincinnati, Kansas City, some of these small market teams, they can't do what the Dodgers are doing, what the Yankees are doing, in buying all these superstars and putting them out on the field. They're really untipping the scales. And I saw this from the owner of the Dodgers coming out and say, hey, don't be mad at me. I'm doing what I can do. It's actually not really true. There's only about 6 to 8 teams maybe in baseball that can pull this off. And it may be even less. I may be shooting that number a little bit high. But, man, I'm going to tell you this right now. I don't like what they're doing, the Dodgers are doing. I don't like what the Yankees are doing. It does, I do agree, take the fun out of baseball and the competitiveness across the league and kind of takes away from the excitement of going into the playoffs and saying, hey, anybody can possibly win this. Right now we're going in, we're hoping the Cubs are going to have a fantastic year, but we're kind of looking at, hey, man, the Dodgers are probably going to win the National League because they have not one closer. They don't have not 2 closers. They have 3 closers in the back of that pen that are going to be setting up for them, and they're going to be able to flip those dominoes around. It's actually insane. I'm not really happy about it either. But again, we're going to get into this. We're going to get into this heavily next week. This week, though, the Cubs did have a couple of games at Camelback Ranch against the Dodgers. They did win both of them, as I jokingly said, break out the brooms. We beat the $1 billion Dodgers. They didn't really have any starters in, but there was some good things that came out of it. Vidal Bujan had a couple of good games to break out of the gate. Gage Workman, the Rule 5 draft pick, actually had very good couple of days. Not only did he have a couple of good days out there, he actually flashed the mitt a little bit. So just something to look forward to here. Gage Workman, someone who's trying to work his way on to the Chicago Cubs. Foster Covers, man, thank you for joining in the show. Greatly appreciate you. Greatly appreciate all of you spending a little time with me here in the morning as we go through the first week of the Cubs spring training out in Camelback Ranch. We didn't really get to see a lot of stars, but for the Cubs play, Michael Busch did get out there, had a couple of good ball games to start. He had a home run, a double. Jordan Wicks had a solid outing, gave up 3 hits, struck out 3 yesterday. So yeah, it was kind of fun just to hear the crack of the bat, the snap of the mitt, let the Cubs get back out there. Yeah, and Camel Toe, if you are a Dodgers fan, you should be over the moon because there's a really good chance you guys are going to win back-to-back World Series championships here. So, but I do really appreciate everyone out here. As I said, Foster Covers, man, got to run. A Camel Toe Inspector got to run, but I appreciate you jumping in. Hopefully we'll see you again when we're back on Monday and we're back on Wednesday. I know you're a fan of the show and you've been around, and we appreciate having you out there, man. You have a wonderful weekend, my friend. As we continue to walk through this, I wanted to get into this because we just watched the Cubs cut what would be, and I thought was a very good trade piece when they traded Chris Bryant to San Francisco and gained Alexander Canario. I was actually really head over heels about this move, and it was really sad to see some of these names that we're looking at that are still on the Cubs. And I just said he had a good couple of days, but I think I'd rather have Canario here than Vidal Bujan. I much rather see this young prospect who seems to be starting to blossom, who may end up on an NL Central rival and wind up killing us with his potential. Let's hope that doesn't happen. But basically right now, Caleb Killian is still on the Cubs. So that trade with Chris Bryant is Killian for Chris Bryant. That trade kind of looks like the Cubs gave away Chris Bryant for nothing. A little upsetting if you're a Cubs fan, because I think that after seeing a little bit of what Canario had last year, I would have liked to see a lot more. So again, this is something we have to deal with. I know it's a crowded outfield, but they were starting to work Canario over to first base to possibly be a backup behind Michael Busch. It just doesn't seem the backups for the Cubs right now have any idea on this roster what they're doing. But that's why we have a month of spring training. We'll figure it out, and as the weeks go by, hopefully we can gain a better picture for you all and give you guys some backups, and hopefully we end up with some quality backups. But as I said here, I don't expect Justin Turner to be backing up at third base. The 40-year-old hasn't played third base in a couple of years. He split his time between first base and DH. So Cubs Nation, get that kind of out of your head. I don't believe you're going to be seeing many games at third base for our friend Justin Turner, newly signed just this past week. The guy I did want to get into really quick, though, was my guy, Kevin Alcantara. I was actually really jacked when the Cubs traded for this gentleman in the Anthony Rizzo trade. He came over with a lot of hype as one of their top prospects, and I'm really, again, hoping that what happened with Canario does not happen with Alcantara. It does seem that the Cubs do have a little love for him. Craig Counsell this week on Kevin Alcantara per marquee. Kevin wants to be great. I think he's a young man. The biggest thing is he's a very young player. The thing you really have to keep in mind with Kevin is he's still very young. Counsell on Alcantara's height being a factor in his development. Taller players have a harder time going fast in this game. I think it takes a little bit longer. There's a reward at the end of it, but it's just harder. The swing, it's harder. It's just harder for taller people. Counsell continued in Alcantara's development. I really believe that I'm not holding it against him. It's more like you keep that in mind as the guy progresses and realizes that it's a complicated thing. For me, this signing of Travis Jankowski might mean that Kevin is going to end up getting more quality at bats and end up in AAA to start the season, so he can prepare. Maybe if we have a couple of injuries, he'll jump back into he'll jump back on to the Major League ball club. But the Jaguar in his first couple of games, man, he's 4 for 5. He had a double, a home run, a stolen base off that double almost immediately. So he's starting to show off his 5-tool talent here early in spring. He had an outfield assist as well. But again, it sounds like the Cubs rather have Alcantara get everyday plate appearances in Iowa, which for me is fine if it's going to continue to enhance his development. I really believe, and after watching these past 2 games, I started thinking about his true potential. His bat speed is undeniable, guys. This guy, the one thing that is a concern, and you hope that there's some development and he can work with Dustin Kelly, kind of the way Dustin Kelly has worked with PCA to improve his swing and lessen his strikeouts. The strikeout rate, man, it's a major issue, man. He's striking out right now at a 30% rate in the minors. That doesn't bode well for a smooth transition to the major leagues. So, he's probably always going to be a power over hit guy, but his willingness to take walks and his use of the opposite field will bode well for his performance in those areas. Few players as tall as him move as well as he does. He's a very twitchy athlete with extreme athleticism, solid speed, good instincts on the bases and in the outfield. So I'm trying to think of a comp for him, because at his height, I looked him up in a couple different spots, and I've seen him anywhere from 6'6" to 6'8". He looks a little bit closer to 6'8" with that slender frame being around 180. But again, this is a guy that seems to have 5-tool talent. And he does play, he has played a majority of his time in the minor leagues. So, or in center field in the minor leagues throughout his career. With PCA coming up to the Cubs and probably going to be a mainstay in this lineup, and God, we hope so, for a very long time. It looks like if Kyle Tucker does not get re-signed by the Chicago Cubs, you may be looking at a gentleman like Kevin Alcantara coming up over maybe even an Owen Casey, adding some weight to himself, maybe trying to push that 200-pound mark. He's going to need a little bit more weight and a little bit more power if he moves over to one of the corner positions, which we'll have Ian Happ here for another year or two. So he's probably going to be moving over to right field, especially if Kyle Tucker isn't re-signed by the club. And this kind of gets into that cheap uniform that we were talking about with the Cubs, where the Cubs, instead of signing these top free agents, just want to seem to build through their farm system. And they do have some quality talent down there. So I'm not knocking them for doing this, but you also have to make splash plays, and you do have to get the Kyle Tuckers in here. And I don't know if anyone's been paying attention to training camp over the past couple of days, but his Kyle Tucker's batting practices, thanks to the setup man, whose videos have been fantastic, and I highly would say he's a great follow on YouTube and he's a great follow on Twitter. Get onto this gentleman because he is out there. He's going to be on our show here in the next couple of weeks. We're trying for next weekend. We'll keep you informed of that through the week. But he's very busy putting up quality videos. He has some great videos of Kyle Tucker's at bats up right now. He was absolutely mashing some bombs in the cage the other days. Check out the setup man. He's got some really good videos out there. He's doing a great job, and we appreciate all the work he's doing. So as we get set up here and as we go, the Cubs do play today at 2:05 against the Southsiders from the Southsiders. That game's going to be on Marquee. So go ahead and if you're into watching preseason baseball, as I have been, I tried to watch the first two games. I caught the first couple of innings, and then I just kind of went through the highlights. It's a little rough early in the season to continue to watch some of these guys that you just know will be either cut or sent down to the minor leagues. But it's also fun if you see some of these development players that you want to keep an eye on. So whatever your cup of tea is, Cubs again will be on Marquee at 2:05. Another bit of news I forgot to do at the top of the show: Pete Crow Armstrong is changing his jersey number from 52 to 4, and it was kind of a joke, that they put up there. They said that they asked him why, and he said that I can't remember if it was Hoyer. I think it was Hoyer said he needed a smaller number because faster guys have smaller numbers. And you can still kind of see in his baseball cap there, he's still rocking those stars. I'm loving PCA. I'm loving these young kids coming up, man. I think they're going to be a great development talent for us. Yes, and thank you, breaking news, Bruce. Justin Steele is on the bump today for the Cubs, getting his first workout. We did have Cody Petite in that first game. He had a very rough second inning. I was actually watching it. The Cubs did bounce back and score, I think, 6 in the following inning, but he got rocked around. I think he got up to like 40 pitches in 2 innings. I think he had like 26 pitches in that second inning. Couldn't seem to really get out of trouble, but he did bounce out. He got pulled. So again, I'm not looking too much into it. Hitters are usually in spring ahead of the pitchers. So, I just know pitchers are trying to work on some things, some new pitches and their styles and things like that. So for me, not worried in the least little bit about what's going on with the Chicago Cubs. If they were to lose like the Dodgers did 12-3 or 12-4, whatever the final was, I don't really care. I don't care much about any of this spring training. I just continue to hope that we see these pitchers get sharper over the next couple of weeks, opposed to right now where they've only been in camp for a couple of weeks, just practicing some long toss and light hitting practice. So nothing's overly concerned for me at this moment. Just the injuries. We hope that everyone can jump back on. We hope that Matt Shaw continues to develop and continues to get better from this injury. As we said last week, these obliques can be tricky, but it seems like it was minor. I saw him with a chest protector on. kind of moving around. And I did see him taking some light swings. And anytime you have an oblique that you can take some light swings, that's a very, very good sign. So I'm not overly concerned about Matt Shaw at this moment. And again, as I said at the top of the show, Javier Assad, quality guy for the Cubs since he's been called up. Seems to be getting back as he's resuming throwing and catching as well. So hopefully we'll have these guys back, we'll have a full roster. It'll be interesting to see what the Cubs do as they move forward into Japan on the 18th and 19th. As I stated at the beginning of the show, this game will be the first game on the 18th, 5 o'clock in the morning, will be nationally broadcast on Fox. So, and it will also be on the Score 670. And I'll be checking in. We'll be putting some posts up. So stay tuned for that. Hopefully the Cubs get out to Tokyo and they can sweep the Dodgers there. I'm going to assume it's going to be Yamamoto and it's going to be Roki, the two Japanese pitchers for the Dodgers, to go against the Cubs. And that is what it is. I have not seen Craig Counsell say who the second starter is for game 2. I would assume, since it's a regular season ball game and he's given the nod to Shota because he is in Japan, I'm going to assume you're going to see Justin Steele in game 2, assuming everything goes well in his start and he doesn't have any ailments coming out of the start today or through the spring. So as we continue, Kyle and I will be back next Saturday and we will have a full update of what happened from today all the way through next Friday out there in Sloan Park or wherever the Cubs are playing their spring training games this weekend. I believe they are at home today against the White Sox at Sloan Park, making their Sloan Park debut. So we'll keep you updated. And next week, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget, we're going to get into the full finances. We're going to break down everything that's went on with the Cubs, how the Cubs are $60 million under the cap. Have they created a competitive enough roster in this rotation? Because I'll be absolutely honest with you guys, I have some questions about this rotation. I don't know that I have so many questions about the bullpen, though. I do think that the Cubs solidified the bullpen with Presley, Hodge, and then you look at Eli Morgan. You got Merriweather bouncing back into the fray. Hopefully he can bounce back and be a contributor like he has been, a solid piece out of that bullpen for the Cubs. So I'm looking forward to this next week because there's so much ground to cover on this. And we'll see you all. Don't forget, on the 4 Stars Rewind, we had the bare minimum on Thursday. If you missed it, go check it out. Dustin and Brandon laid down a badass show for y'all on Thursday. And if you missed anything on Wednesday, Jason, Kyle, and I broke down the defensive tackles in free agency and in the draft to kind of hopefully think that the Bears can fix these trenches as we draw closer to free agency and the NFL draft. And, of course, coming this Monday, we'll have the Hallis Hall Hangover. I will be absent as my daughter has a band concert that I have to attend. But I will be back on Wednesday as Kyle, Jason, and I will jump through all of the fun that we have in wide receivers and tight ends. Ladies and gentlemen, there's some talented individuals in this draft at that position. I do think that the Chicago Bears will maybe with one of their later picks end up taking maybe a slot receiver. We'll see how this goes. Maybe they'll sign one in free agency and we'll never have an opportunity to draft one. We don't know what Ben Johnson's going to do, but that's what makes this so fun. If you guys are interested in the day, like I said, Cubs at 2:05, there's a fantastic college basketball slate on for the entire day. I'm looking forward to Iowa State and Houston. That's going to be a fun ball game out of the Big 12. Hopefully my Jayhawks back at Allen Fieldhouse can return to some kind of prominence after they're getting their brains beat in BYU this past Tuesday. But get in on some college basketball. We're approaching March Madness. We'll put together a nice March Madness show for y'all to kind of get in our picks and
You got Kentucky and Alabama tonight. Man, that should be a fun ball game to check out. So get on it. I appreciate y'all spending a little time with me this morning on the Northside 9 here on 4-Star Chicago Sports. As I said, we'll be back next week. We'll have a much longer show for you. We'll get into some big topics for y'all and have a lot of fun. And as I said, I appreciate y'all showing up, showing out. Love y'all. Until next week, bear down, cub up. We'll see y'all, baby.